Hi, I'm Lisa Bloom.
And I'm Sarah Bloom. And today I want to talk about anxiety in the workplace. You know, we're all feeling stressed right now, and I think this is something that everyone can relate to. So today I'm going to talk about whether anxiety is a disability and whether employers have to accommodate you if you have an anxiety disorder. So stay tuned to the end where I'm going to give you my top tip on how to ask for a workplace accommodation for your anxiety. So we're all feeling stressed right now. Mom, what are you doing to fight stress?
Listen, yeah, it is a challenging time for everybody. What I do is I have a vegetable garden and I grow a lot of my own vegetables like broccoli and snap peas and a lot of herbs. And it's very gratifying to go out there in the morning with my coffee and see how everybody's doing and pull off the dead leaves and admire the growth and listen to the birds singing. And that really helps ground me for the day.
You sound like Mary Poppins.
Practically perfect in every way.
So I'm dealing with it in a different way. I'm watching a lot of trashy TV. I'm giving myself full permission to just turn my brain off at night, take a break from the news, and I'm doing a lot of eating. But I think, we're all really stressed right now. And of course, stress is different than anxiety. Everyone is stressed, but 18% of US adults suffer from an anxiety disorder, and that's about 40 million people. Anxiety is the most common mental illness in the United States. Females are more likely to have it than males, and those numbers are in a normal year. But of course, this is not a normal year. We're in the middle of a global epidemic, and it's probably safe to say those numbers have increased. A recent poll showed that 36% of Americans say coronavirus has made a serious impact on their mental health. Remote services like Talkspace have seen over a 50% increase in their customers since this epidemic began.
So the big question for us as employment lawyers is whether all of this anxiety is a disability under the law.
So, right, is anxiety a disability? And I'm going to give you our lawyer's favorite answer, which is sometimes, or it depends. So under the ADA, which is the federal law governing disability discrimination, that's the Americans with Disabilities Act, a disability is defined as a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. So in other words, does your anxiety have a big effect on you? And, major life activities can be ability to work or interacting with others. Things like sleeplessness. Some courts have held that an employee only being able to sleep 2 to 4 hours a night can be seen as interfering with a major life activity. So that person was considered disabled under the ADA.
And what's another one is just taking longer to do things. If you have, for example, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and you need extra time to do things like washing or brushing your hair, taking a shower, one court has ruled that limits a substantial life activity, and so that could be a disability under the law.
Right. So anxiety can be considered a disability, but it's really going to depend on how severe your anxiety is. If your anxiety is severe, you might qualify and you might be considered disabled, but if it's mild, you might not be. And I'll add that some states like California, where we practice, have a lower bar as to what's considered a disability. So California law requires that, the mental condition limit a major life activity, not substantially limit. So you should really be on the lookout for your state's particular laws on this.
And so why are we even talking about this? Why is it important to figure out if anxiety, which a lot of people are facing right now, if that qualifies as a disability, Sarah?
So your employer is required to make a reasonable accommodation for your disability. And what is a reasonable accommodation?
So a reasonable accommodation is a very important phrase in the law. And that means that if you have a disability and you let your employer know about it, the employer has an obligation to try to work with you, to accommodate you. Maybe you need to come in later. Maybe your work performance needs to be altered a little bit. Maybe this fly needs to leave me alone.
That would be a reasonable accommodation.
That would be a reasonable accommodation, right? So listen, to be fair to employers, they don't just have to do anything that the employee asks. They do have the right to get the job done, whatever it needs to be done. But they do have an obligation, once they're told, to work with the employee, see if they can work something out so that the disabled person can keep working, because that's what we want them to do.
And you touched on some examples of reasonable accommodations. I would say the biggest one to think about right now is working from home. So say your anxiety is causing you so much stress that you're finding it hard to go to work. If you have a job that you can work from home, your employer may be required to let you work from home. You know, if you're a grocery store worker, that might not be reasonable, but it'll really depend on your job. You know, other reasonable accommodations are letting you take a leave of absence, modifying your work schedule, or reassigning you to a different position in the company if that position is available and you're qualified for it.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. So if somebody is suffering from anxiety and it's interfering with her work, what should she do?
So the first thing to do is to get help. You know, we are not mental health professionals, so you should seek therapy. You know, if you have insurance, contact your insurance company to find a doctor who is covered for you. And then you should see if that mental health care professional can give you a diagnosis of anxiety. You know, do an assessment, see if you can get that diagnosis. And then the next thing to do is to tell your employer in writing about your anxiety. Now, my top tip for getting your employer to give you a reasonable accommodation is in writing, say, I am requesting a reasonable accommodation, and attach a doctor's note which has your diagnosis of anxiety. So after you send the email about having a disability or having this anxiety diagnosis, you should contact a lawyer if your boss won't give you a reasonable accommodation, your company refuses to engage in a dialogue that Lisa was talking about to accommodate your disability, you know, an adverse employment action is taken against you, such as your boss terminates you, you know, you get harassed at work, or you're otherwise discriminated against. Now, if you're going to contact a lawyer or any of these things happen to you, you should do that immediately. You know, the law has very specific time limits, which can be very short in which to file your case. So, you know, most lawyers in this area, you know, including us, will do a free and confidential consultation with you. So you should really do this right away. So, in conclusion, I know anxiety can be debilitating, especially in these times, but just know you have rights and you're protected by the law.
And Sarah, if people want to contact us, how do they do that?
They can go on thebloomfirm.com, go on the contact page. You know, we respond very quickly. And in fact, Lisa yells at us if we don't respond fast enough to people's inquiries. So contact us on thebloomfirm.com.
And you know, we all are getting a little punchy sometimes, but I want everybody to have a sense of humor. Stay safe and stay strong, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.